All right, Chelsea fans, welcome back to another episode. That's right, of the London is Blue podcast. Hopefully, your favorite Chelsea podcast out there and a part of the Men in Blazers Media Network. Look, the Brighton result in the FA Cup bouncing us out of the competition may have us a little down, and that might carry through a part of the conversation today. So I had to bring on the bundle of joy himself, Mr. Brandon Busby, just bristling with positive energy on this Sunday of February 9th as we record the day after, which feels like the right decision to record the day after that match, Brandon, not the day of.
No doubt. Feel like this is a setup all along if I'm supposed to be bringing the positivity into one of these episodes. But hey, I have a track record. I've been known as that person. So I'm here to deliver. For those of you that don't know, I used to be on this podcast. You might not have heard my voice this year. For those of you who know, it feels good to be back. I enjoy it. But the thing I found most hilarious, Dan, was Brighton's fans booing like Cucurella and Sanchez. And I was like, I'm sorry. Did you want them to stay? Especially thinking of Sanchez. I'm like, why are you not applauding? We can do this right now if we want to, make a deal on this side of the pitch. But I found that to be a bit hilarious and maybe misguided on their part.
Well, it felt as if there was another missed opportunity in trying to figure out how to sell us other players that they really don't want for a really overinflated value. I think that's what they should be trying to do when we go and play them, is really find someone that is on the outside looking in within their squad, have them play the best game of their lives, and then figure out how that player gets transferred to Chelsea in the next window. I mean, that is clearly the pipeline right now. It's funding their club. They should be very happy about it. And they got the result over us after, what we had was a pretty decent run of wins against them after that kind of weird loss-draw scenario we had prior to that streak of wins. So this is definitely the odd result out in a string of the last 4 or 5.
For sure. Verbruggen dropped the ball in more ways than one because he was the one who had the best chance of having a great day and getting signed for a big fee, and absolutely botched it for him. So opportunity missed, my guy.
Well, we are going to get into this match review. I think there's a couple things we want to talk about. There were some Enzo Maresca post-match comments that definitely ignited the fan base, maybe unified us in the wrong way. There's also maybe just a little bit of a conversation around players on upward trajectory, or if there are any at the moment. We know that there's going to be a midweek match or midweek preview that we're going to do that talks about the transfer business as a whole under the Clear Lake organization. And we'll preview a little bit of that, and then also talk about what changes are going to need to be made to the lineup heading into the Friday match. But before we do that, we always get into some wonderful 3-word match reviews, help set the stage, help people remember what actually happened from listeners' opinions here. We had Chris with the boring Chelsea, an absolute throwback on that one. We had Techie Tiger with the ESPN Plus canceled. That's right, you don't need that subscription anymore because we're out.
Strategic if he was on the monthly plan. Tell you what, He had no faith. Good job, Techie.
Yeah, TK Latte with the portfolio squad exposed. Really like that one. Our good friend Sam, CFC Central, with the strong sorry energy. Man, it's bad when we're referencing back to sorry at the moment. You had Archie with the South Coast sabotage. Really like that one as well. And then Jeek with the SD's Amex canceled. Please. Actually, yes, please.
Not wrong at all. Look, some very well played ones. I was reading Sam's newsletter this morning, shameless plug, to help me frame maybe the bigger picture on this one. And yeah, he was talking a lot about possession without probing. I mean, that's very sorry-esque, no doubt. Not winning the match just on possession alone. But hey, I jumped in with return to sender, Dan. I think that there's a lot of things we could return back to the Amex, which is funny that Jeek had their Amex canceled. I mean, it's like, hey, you guys have really good customer support, right? All right, what's my window on return? I would like maybe a fraud claim in there we could impose. I'm not really sure.
Ooh, that would be delightful. I don't know if that works in football and world football yet, but boy, oh boy, if there was a club that could invent the avenue for that. Look, we came up with the amortization over 7 years, 8 years. Like we figured out that loophole. We have to have the loophole to figure out a return to sender situation. I went with Curse of Brighton because we've had some odd results against them, but also I think we're seeing the impact of some of our Brighton acquisitions continue to struggle for this organization, and not all on the pitch. But look, before we get into the match details, as it were, you mentioned the newsletter. You can always subscribe to that one. It's free. It comes out on a weekly basis. Sam does a wonderful job with that. You also can sign up in Discord as well, join in a free or paid capacity. You can hit the bell icon, get notified on YouTube when we drop a new video. So subscribe there, like and comment on the videos, and you also can leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and or Spotify. It's always appreciated. But look, we put it off long enough. We made it 5 minutes of the podcast without getting into the actual match, but we're doing it now. The opponent was Brighton. It was this past Saturday, February 8th in the FA Cup, which we are no longer in at the MX, with a scoreline of 2 to Brighton, 1 to Chelsea. Verbruggen with a own goal in the 5th minute, though a lot of people wanted Cole Palmer to just get the recognition for it. I don't think you can make the case on that one. Ruder in the 12th minute, and then Matoma in the 57th minute. And that was all the scoring that was to be had, Brandon.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a lineup. There were some changes. Do you want to give the listeners a little reminder of who was on the pitch to start?
Yeah, for sure. Well, obviously, net putting, I
Tough
would
keeper.
say, yeah, putting Jorgensen back on the bench for this one. This is usually his competition type setup, but Sanchez, as Maresca, is navigating this delicate situation. It's what we call a lose-lose scenario in the business world, and so it'll be interesting to see how he manages this. But at right back, you had Malo Gusto, Tosin at right center back, Trevo at left center back, and then Cucurella left back. Kieran Dewsbury Hall and Caicedo holding in the middle, with Neto, Cole Palmer, and Sancho in behind, in uninspired, in Kunku up top. And so subs, you had Enzo coming in the 58th minute, Noni Madueke and Tyreek George double sub in the 74th minute. So essentially replacing half of the attack. Two of them coming quite a bit late, but otherwise you left a new bench, by the way, a very new look on this one. So Jorgensen, which, okay, fine. Ishe Samuel Smith continued to get included. It's good. Same with Akimpong. Aaron Anselmino, who joined from Boca, obviously, in the winter transfer window when the Argentinian season ended. Levi Colwell, but then Mathis Amagu as well, the new signing, making the bench. Dan, thoughts on that one in terms of like him and Anselmino, I guess, very new. Usually we kind of put them in with the dev squad, the youth academy, kind of let them adjust to life in England, but either sign of confidence or just maybe not taking it serious enough. You could add other people involved.
Well, when you have Wes Fofana out in a long-term injury, you have Romeo Lavia, who hasn't come back from his hamstring, you have Benoit Badiashile, who's getting closer but not ready yet, and then you knew that Reece James wasn't involved as a technical decision, though not traveling or on the bench at all. That's kind of a question mark there. You had Nico Jackson, who is getting back to be ready for the game on Friday, and then Mark Guiu not available too. You were going to see, I think, a couple of fresh faces in this grouping here. I just think it definitely is, and continues to point to the fact that our squad is not as deep as it once was, with a couple of injuries, and then not as deep or as strong as we'd like in a couple of key areas. But as we get into some of those possession stats, as you mentioned, we did win the possession battle, 57% to 43, but that doesn't count as a win on the official FA Cup forms. You had 2 big chances for Brighton, 0 for Chelsea. We had 7 shots to their 6, 1 goalkeeper save apiece. We had 3 fouls to their 8, and 2 yellow cards apiece. No VAR in this one, which we should maybe just talk about that. It was a handball in the build up to the second goal. Pretty obvious, but didn't get called. And that's just the way this round of the FA Cup works, because of the amount of teams in areas where they cannot institute VAR. And so in order to have some level of fairness in the competition, they just don't run it this round.
Ironic, right? But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, look, I think a lot of us watched Man City play Leyton Orient, and, Men in Blazers put out the post of like, Manchester City, champions of England and Europe, will be playing in this locker room, in this, environment. Yeah, and there's obviously no way you're going to get VAR installed there. So I get it. But yeah, you talk about fairness of outcomes, definitely not fairness of rules, knowing that massive variability when it comes to the referees and things like that. So yeah, for sure. I mean, but that going into that stuff. So I think if I'm a player, like we saw Dunk, put his
Yeah.
arm up and knock down Cole Palmer. Not the biggest thing in the world, but like easily VAR-able. I think if I'm coming into these matches where it isn't VAR, I'm taking opportunities to shithouse people because you can get away with it. Like the referees have been trained over the last couple seasons now with VAR to actually not make the call and wait
Yeah.
for someone to come in their ear. So we even saw it today, or I'm sorry, yesterday, where the referee thought about making, but he just let play go on. And I think because he's again been trained to, someone will come in my ear, but it just never came. And then it's too late to address any of the situations.
Yeah, and I think we don't really do them on a match where we lose, so I think we're going to skip the Nick Verlaney shithouse moment of the match. Though I will say I do enjoy that Cucurella, regardless of the match, is willing to be the biggest wind-up individual on the pitch.
Mm-hmm.
It actually is fantastic. I really do love that we have someone of that ilk on our team. People might disagree with that, but when he was able to wind up half their squad off of a light, or maybe an extra touch of the kick on him, and roll around and kind of disrupt play, that was nice. I did like that.
Yeah, he's got it in him, no doubt. He's our, one of our more shithousey players in times. I'm glad that he's doing some defending as well and finding some success to balance it out because you can't make a career out of shithousing. But I'm sure Nick could remind me who has.
Well, look, we're going to get a quick ad break out of the way. When we come back, we'll talk about those Maresca comments after the match and what do we think that means from just where the club's mentality is at the moment. So stay tuned and we'll be right back. Okay, look, there's no sugarcoating this quote from Enzo Maresca after the match, Brandon. I'm just going to read it and then I'll give you the opportunity to react immediately to it. Enzo Maresca on being out of the FA Cup. It is a shame. It's for sure a shame. No doubt. It's a difficult competition. For sure, it is a big shame for us, but if there is something positive, just should have stopped. He really should have
Correct.
stopped before this. We can be focused on the Premier League and the Conference League. Hopefully, we can continue our journey there.
He's not even confident. He ended it with hopefully, right? It's like, hey, this is all right. There's two ways you play this, right? So we're all working professionals. You come in, you do like a business review, a postmortem breakdown. You're like, we messed it up. Yep, we failed the product launch. We're actually just going to get rid of it now. But we're going to focus on these other ones that we've got. And you're just like, no, we needed that. This was a part of the business plan. We needed the revenue. Like this is a part of like how we're going to get minutes for other players. Not good enough. And it's not like we walked into Man City's starting 11. Like this was Brighton, like beat up. Their list of injuries are far greater than ours. It's a young squad. They really trusted a lot of players. Shout out to SofaScore. You can now on the lineup actually tab onto age, and you've got teenagers in there, right? I mean, I think outside of Danny Welbeck and Lewis Dunk, I mean, they were probably younger. They would have been younger than us. I mean, it's 25.4 to 24.7, but that's because they had 34 and 33-year-olds. So, they were extremely young as well. I think the only way if you're Maresca and you can lay that line out there is with a hell of a lot more confidence and clarity. And where there is the problem, Dan, is the clarity. If you come in and say, hey, look, we rotated, we tried to do some different things, we even rested Reese, like we're taking a long-term approach with this one, because to be quite honest, FA Cup wasn't in our top 3 this season. Premier League, top 4, and Conference League. Those is what we've committed to as a club and what you will continue to see us put our best foot forward in, a la Cole Palmer coming into the squad for the knockout rounds. At least now you have clarity and confidence that there is a plan. Hearing that, my gosh, I mean, like none of us would walk in front of our boss or like a board and say something like that. Like this is this is just not good enough for him at this level.
It felt like the scene in Succession where the rocket had blown up. And so they're having the post press conference on that to talk about the blown up rocket. It was about as much of a failure launch type of moment for Enzo Maresca with the comment he laid out there as it was in Succession. Even with the fact that I think in general, he put out what I would call a safe side. He didn't really make any big gambles on trusting a talented youth player like Josh or Ty to start the game. I mean, he didn't stick maybe with his decision on Jorgensen from the previous match to say, hey, I need to get you up to being more match ready, considering I'm going to trust you likely for a string of games, because we can't allow Sanchez to continue to undermine or take us out of games, as it were. And so I guess I'm just really confused. I'm confused at his positioning aligned with the players he put out. We know that Jackson was not going to be in this game. We knew that Guiu kind of put himself in a position of not being contentious. I think we felt like we were going to see Nkunku start this game. I think Sam was definitely trying to push him up. There's definitely some propaganda that he was putting out there. Did not come to fruition. We saw Dewsbury Hall come in. He's not really been a contributor across the entirety of the season. And I guess it felt like, and maybe you felt this way too, this was a game that was there for the taking. But the energy level, the fight, the commitment of the Brighton players to press, to turn over, to win the ball in dangerous positions, to try to go over the top, to catch us out because our defenders are a little shaky at the moment. We let that happen, and we continue to let that happen. And Maresca finds himself in a situation in the last game where we need to come back and win, and makes changes in the 52nd minute, I think it was like 51 and then 62. He makes 4 changes in the game. This game, he makes 1 change in the 58th minute, makes 2 changes in the 74th minute, and there's really not enough time to kind of change the outcome of the match. And I felt like we saw some really good signs about him making a more proactive, positive change to the match. And it feels like this one, he just watched it unfold thinking it was going to improve, but there was no sign in the second half, even after even before the changes, that there was going to be any type of change. I mean, we had 4 shots in total in the second half. We had 3 in the first. And, those shots that we had, I mean, it was Tyreek in the 84th minute. It was Cole in the 74th. It was Enzo in the 67th. And we had 1 shot from 45 to 67. And that was Pedro Neto with a blocked shot.
Yeah. So I hear a lot of indecisiveness as you break all that down, right? I mean, the first thing you brought up is the goalkeeping. If he believed that Jorgensen, is their best chance to win, Petr Cech played every single game in every single competition when he was here. It didn't matter, right? Like, you can run him out. The thing is with the goalkeeper, he clearly hasn't decided, which is why he put Sanchez back in, which means who knows who's playing. Like, Sanchez didn't bottle it, but like, he didn't have to do much either. And so you didn't get much out of Jorgensen midweek, and now you're not getting much here. The point is, Maresca didn't give himself enough information to make a decision. He's just continued to muddy the water, especially in the goalkeeping department, right? If you're going to make this change, 5-6 matches, run them out, see what happens so you can decisively make a decision. And they didn't do it. And so we're back to, I don't really know. This one wasn't really great. This one wasn't really great either, but no one did anything wrong. So good luck. Let's see what happens. And I find that to be super frustrating. And then you talk about the changes in the match. If he's not making changes, like the assumption is that you have two assumptions. 1, he's okay with the way things are going, or 2, he doesn't trust the people that he has to make a difference. But when you look at the people he brought in, like, there's no reason that you can make that assumption, because when Noni Madueke comes in, he's probably going to go start midweek, right? Like, you rested him for this cup game. You let Neto and Sancho get back out there. Tyreek George, finally, young player, plenty direct. But it's just the concern is either you didn't trust your bench again, or you just were happy with what's going on. You can't be happy what's going on. But even then, like, make the decision, right or wrong. And it just kind of seems like there's a lot of hesitation with him right now, which is where I'm concerned with the run of form. I feel like the run of form is catching up to him. He had this same wobble of 8 matches at Leicester. They won, I think, the last 3 matches of the season to like sneak back up into first place. It's almost like carbon copy based on what Sam broke down in the newsletter. And so it's something that I feel like he doesn't have a lot of experience. Second year as a full-time manager, coach, however you want to square it, Dan. That's not a lot to break down. And when he doesn't have leaders on the field and in the team because they're all young, because the co-sporting director is playing football manager with Chelsea, where do you go for someone to grab the team by the back of the neck and propel them to the top? We don't have it right now.
Oh, look, he may not be playing Football Manager because it got canceled for this year. So he might be playing the
Tough
last
timing.
generation. Very tough timing. We were very sad to see that news
Pro
come
Evolution,
out.
like
Yeah,
2010.
could do it there. Maybe he's doing an EA FC sim in that nature. I'm really aligned on your view that there's just an unwillingness to make the tough decision. And we've seen the Sanchez Jorgensen thing. I think maybe he would say that he has enough tape because he's seen almost 1,300 minutes across 14 starts for him this year. So, I mean, like, he has seen him in the Conference League. He was the keeper in our Southampton match. He was the keeper in our Ipswich match. So, like, he has played, and he was in our West Ham match. So he has had 3 matches in the Premier League. Whether or not you feel like it gave him enough confidence to like make the decision over Sanchez, but I feel like I mean, I've been waiting to talk to you about this as our resident goalkeeper. I mean, what are you seeing, or did you see anything with Jorgensen in the last West Ham match? And then, are you at the point where you view him as being the better option to test for that like next 10 matches that we have, or are you of the mind that Maresca is making the right call and like I need to rotate them until I get one of them to play consistently?
No, that last option is not it, because this is usually how it goes for goalkeepers. You get benched, you get super pissed off, you work really hard, and then when you get a chance 6, 7, 8 matches later, you go in and you're like on it. You play or don't, and we know it as goalkeepers. Like, we're well aware you're either the number one or you're not. You play or you don't, and that is part of the position. It's also why you can still stay sharp and do really well just training, unlike a field player. And that's why a lot of backups will be bought and put into starting positions and things like that. And so for me, it comes all the way back to the beginning of the season, Dan, is like, who bought Jorgensen? Was this an Enzo signing? Was this a sporting director signing? Because it doesn't seem like Enzo, if he thinks if Jorgensen was Enzo's guy, then he should have no problem with all the Bobbert wobbles to like put him in and say, look, I agreed. We scouted him. We see something that we like. I'm going to give him 6, 8 matches here, not just a run in the Conference League and the Cup. And they're probably like, Conference League's important to us so that you're getting valuable minutes. Okay, sure. You're still playing JV level competition up until now we get in the knockout, and it's still not Premier League level. We're stuck. Clearly, Maresca doesn't care who it is. That's how I look at it. He could care. He doesn't love Sanchez and he doesn't love Jorgensen. He's just trying to figure out what's going to work week in, week out, instead of saying, here's 6, 8 matches. I'm driving this. Let's go do the business. And I think that's what's frustrating in that sense, is you're literally not doing anything. And I think this is what happens if the manager's not super tied into the recruitment strategy. We just heard Jason Kidd talking about Luka going to the Lakers. And he's like, I'm just the coach. I just coach shoes here. And the reporter's like, you had no idea. And it seems like same thing. Maresca's like, I show up to Cobham, whoever's in front of me, I train them, we go play. That's not good enough at this level. The manager has to be bought into who's there.
Well, I think that gets to the argument of, are we actually seeing players improve under Enzo Maresca at this point? Or are we seeing players stay at the same level, or are they potentially regressing? And I think we would maybe make the case that Cole Palmer, even though maybe at times he's not been full fitness over the last like 1 to 2 months, like still is the guy that he occasionally produces a pretty fantastic little bit of action that ends up usually being the difference for this team. And on another day, maybe he's the individual. He had that real great crack from distance that definitely put Verbruggen under a little bit of pressure to make the save. And then obviously he got a wonderful helping hand from Verbruggen on the other one. So, on another day, could have had a brace, could have been heading in a really positive trajectory for us. I don't know if I would credit Enzo Maresca for where Cole Palmer is at his career, because I think under any manager he would thrive, similar to like the Eden Hazard scenario. But as I kind of look up on just the total lineup of like who we had on the pitch, who was playing today, maybe positionally, you could argue that Cucurella benefits from the way Enzo Maresca sets up the side. But I don't think I can point to a player that's gotten better under Enzo Maresca. Maybe I'm being too reactionary. Maybe I'm, just kind of looking right at the last match and not being kind of more thoughtful and intentional about it. But would you agree, disagree, or are you kind of like maybe don't have the answer yet?
Hard agree, and I will give you a couple examples why. Our best players being Cole Palmer, Enzo, and Caicedo. Two of the three were 100 million pound players, and Cole Palmer at this rate is. Um, no coach is going to really have much of a difference. They are just class players. I am falling in love with Caicedo so well. It doesn't matter what is going on around him. He doesn't care. I have a job to do. I'm great at it. I'm going to go destroy. Got it. I'm going to run my socks off. I don't care if you next to me are working hard or not. I'm just going to do my job and probably a couple other people's job. And you love it. He's not an accountability captain where he will point to someone next to him and say, do better. He just does it by playing at a high level. So then you're like, okay, these are the three players that are locked in, right? A fit Enzo Fernandez, absolutely love. He's dropped off a little bit, but like what we saw kind of late fall into the holiday period was phenomenal. That's what we want to see. Here's how I know players aren't getting better, because you can't tell me what our starting back line and our starting attack is. Our wingers are constantly rotating, and our defense has been a liability all season. Yet we haven't made a signing or an adjustment to solve that. Now, Trevo could be a solve for that, and it would be very embarrassing for some of the people that are in charge of the club. If that were the case, they're going to say, no, we put him in a great position to grow. He came back better than he was. Like, we're masters of this scenario playing. False. But that's where I can say, like, your average players aren't becoming great, and your great players are staying great, whether or not they're with you or not. So you always want to see the middle of the pack step up, and you're not seeing it. Can't rely on players. And it's been frustrating because there's a good framework. There are, players that we know need developing. That's part of the whole plan, right? You buy them before they're on their upward trajectory. And we want to be the club where they hit that upward trajectory. But I mean, Noni's a perfect example, like, where's his role? Jaden is in and out, obviously with injury. I mean, Neto, Mudryk, even before he had his oops testing, it's, it'd be hard. I'd be hard pressed for someone to be like, yeah, team really grown under Enzo.
Yeah, and I think to the point of the attack that you talked about in this match, Jaden Sancho, Christopher Nkunku, Pedro Neto, the three of them, the other attackers who are not named Cole Palmer, who started the game, one shot amongst the three of them, and Pedro Neto's was a block shot. That is not of the level to get you to a point to win games. That's not even enough to potentially get you to a point where you're going to draw games if you're relying upon that. And then you kind of look at like, okay, well, you brought in Tyreek, you brought in Madueke, Tyreek gets one shot off, and Nani gets 0 shots. Like, that is not good enough to win games against Premier League opposition. And we can moan about the fact that we didn't necessarily get an easier draw in the FA Cup, and we had to play a Premier League side. We're recording this as Plymouth Argyle in the 89th minute are beating Liverpool, which would be kind of amazing. We didn't get the Blackburn Rovers like Wolves did. We didn't get the Wigan like Fulham did. But like, we should go out to have the ability to beat any team facing in front of us and approach that. And like, this team is at a point in the season where they just don't look up for it. There were kind of, I think, very passive moments in the game where the running really wasn't tough. I mean, the way that Matoma pushed back and really made life difficult for Gusto, and then the way that Veltman and Van Hecke definitely made life, I think, a little difficult for Sancho. Like, he did not look very comfortable kind of going up against those two. particularly on a side with Sancho, Dewsbury Hall, and Cucurella playing so far forward. That was kind of like a major gamble, but it just feels as if we reached a point this season where there's a couple players who look as if they're checked out, not for the entirety of the game, but for large portions of the game. And so some of the commitment is lacking. And whether that's down to individual players, whether that's down to the way the manager is setting them up, it just feels as if we've lost that identity that we were starting to form in the midpoint of the season, where we were on the upward trajectory. We were kind of in the people were talking about us as title contenders before we got exposed. And now we just are left as a bit of a husk of what we were previously.
For sure. I mean, Jaden Sancho, 24 going against Gian Veltman, 33. You'd think on paper that would be mouthwatering, exciting. You know, you had a 19 and a 20-year-old, I think, around him on that side in the midfield with Minta and Balaba.
Mhm.
So I just again, like the cutthroat thing for me, like who's going to make the pass if it's not Enzo? Who's going to, get in behind and make it happen? It's just, it's regressing. Feels like we're regressing. You think when the goals were flown in the beginning of the season, Nico Jackson was doing great. Cole Palmer, we are getting in behind, we were breaking lines, and that's just not happening. It feels like we've slowed down significantly. So I don't know if we're lacking fitness or what, but to your point, I do think it feels mentality driven. It's just the wind has been taken out of our sails. And as I said earlier, you have no one to grab the team by the scruff of the neck and drive them back to the glory level that we were just not that long ago, just a little over 2 months ago at this point. But in football, life comes at you fast and the table will hit you hard.
We're going to last ad break out of the way. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about, what changes we might want to see for the match coming up on Friday and some other associated thoughts. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right. So our next match is against, let me just check the notes here, Brighton in the Premier
Yes.
League. And you would hope in this match, Brandon, that we definitely can commit to winning as an idea, at least on paper. That would be a great way to start this one.
For sure. I think here's the good news. All right. You had to wait 32 minutes to get the good news, but here we go. All right. The good news is we are a much deeper squad than they are, and they have a lot more injuries. I don't think much is going to change from them, right, in 7 days. As we've talked about, Maresca confirmed that Reece James was a scheduled rest day, just for nothing else other than injury prevention, right? He was fit. He's training. It was just like, hey, this is a good one to just skip. All right, so Reece James can come in. You can bring Nico Jackson back in, right? What do you do with the goalkeeping? Honestly, flip a coin 2 hours before the match and you're fine. There's not much from there that I'm going to be real thrilled about. But now you have to balance some of like the confidence and the mentality of these players, right? So, okay, Nico Jackson goes up top. Cole Palmer's in. Again, who are the two next to him? Is it Neto? Is it Sancho again? Is it Madueke? Do you reward some of the players or do you punish players, right? Terry George clearly is going to want to do something, get involved as well. Enzo and Caicedo are in the midfield as you would expect. And the back line is probably Colwell and Chalaba, right? Is what you'd imagine, but who knows? He could surprise us and Kuko will play. So you've got a few changes that you can make right off the bat to make the team significantly stronger.
Yeah.
But the problem though is it's the mental side, right? It's are they gonna, how do we, like Tosin's quotes after the match, right? Like this drove me a little bit crazy. So the club published it. He said, I see it as a lapse of concentration sometimes. He said, we just need to continue to push on and start the game like we did today, then push that through for 90 minutes. My guy, the goalkeeper fumbled the ball into the net. We created jack shit for chances. Like, I don't agree that like us just starting a certain way and then pedal to the floor for 90 minutes is gonna get this team over the hump. It's a lot more than that. And I just think like, you know, we're going to try to analyze this game throughout tomorrow and throughout the week, and we'll come back stronger Friday. Look, Tosin, I appreciate the mentality. It's like my problem, Dan, is I just don't see it. I don't think we've seen it in the last 8-9 matches to be like, yeah, you know what? They can dust themselves up, come back to the same team and get it over the line. Like I haven't seen that characteristic from this team this season.
I mean, we only have seen it recently and in blips when it was, the comeback against West Ham, which, I mean, like, that had a little bit of luck behind it, but that was a uncharacteristic performance from this team where they were able to will themselves back into a winning position, which is not necessarily what this side, for a very long time, has been built to do. And so I
Mhm.
think that would be something that maybe I would point to, but that's kind of the aberration when you think about a 2-2 draw against Bournemouth, when you think about the 3-1 loss to City. Obviously we did beat up on Wolves, which felt very nice on the day. But we've had losses to Ipswich Town this season. We've drawn against Everton. Like, we have a run of fixtures that do not paint us in the best possible light. And I think we kind of talk about this fact that Enzo Maresca mentioned after the match. He was asked about if he was disappointed in how they went behind. And he said, "I don't think so. After we conceded the second goal, we had 3 or 4 chances to score. So the reaction was there." Hard disagree on the quality of those shots and would we actually have scored any of them. Every game is different. In the terms of reaction, after the second goal we conceded, the reaction was there. Again, disagree with that statement pretty profusely. It does feel as if, though, you have players who will come back in the match on Friday who give you a boost. I mean, even though Nico Jackson has had a drought at the moment, is looking for the oasis in the desert to get that goal, he is still third overall for Chelsea this season in goals plus assists. And, there's this kind of narrative on, like, well, you wanted to get Nkunku to have a chance and see what he could do. And, if you're not even registering shots in the entirety of the time on your pitch, like, that is also a major problem. Like, at least Jackson is getting a shot. And, I think this points to the larger question around, like, squad building, squad management. How has the entire organization set this Chelsea team up for success? I mean, we haven't even touched upon the fact that the announcement came out basically the same time that this lineup, I think, was coming out, that Live Nation will be our principal partner through the end of the season. So we finally have a kit sponsor. So I guess we're commercially setting the club up for success for the remainder of the season. But you don't have a legitimate backup for Jackson or somebody to replace within him. You don't have a goalkeeper that you feel super confident in. You don't feel like you necessarily have the midfield depth that you were looking for. There were options out there for you to recall players to reinforce your side. You sign a young player that is already earmarked to go on loan in the summer to another Blue Co team. You are not putting this team in a position and to be successful. And if you were asked the question of, like, well, is this side better equipped now than they were in June 2022 before the takeover transfer started, to go out and be competitive in European competition, to go out and be competitive at the top level of the Premier League? Maybe amongst, like, again, we mentioned 3 players. There are 3 players that we feel really, really good about. We feel really good about Cole Palmer. We feel really good about Moises Caicedo. We feel great about, I think, either Cucurella, and then sometime Enzo. I know you mentioned Enzo, but I would probably go Cucurella as my, like, third if I had to, like, redraft the team today. And then, Jackson is going to be great in a rotation with some other striker who can push him and keep him at a high level. But that's kind of where I think I stop. Reece James is available at times, not available at times. So I think that kind of, like, rules him out of my, like, general consideration there. But on the day, he can be absolutely great. But, like, we are not a better side today than we were a couple years ago. Like, we're kind of stuck and we
Mhm.
haven't gotten out of the stuck.
Yeah, but I mean, it's hard, Dan. Like, when you start the season, you can't make any changes in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Like a transfer window or anything to, like, change your trajectory. It's hard. If only
Yeah. If
there
only, if only
were.
you had these pesky things like winter transfer windows.
I mean, did I look? I didn't watch all of the window. Did I miss something? Like, did something substantial happen? Because, like, I don't see it. Yeah, like, okay, I will credit where it's due. Like, all right, great, Disasi going out alone, fine. Chukwuemeka, fine. Like, great, I guess. But, like, you just kicked it down the road till this summer. We still have depth problems in this squad. We didn't rebalance anything. So they're really sticking to this play and this program. And unless it's a free like Tosin, they're not going to entertain anyone a little bit older because they can't amortize it. Shout out to the sweatshirt I'm wearing from Men in Blazers, Champions of Amortization, which we already talked about. Like, it's just not there. And so I'm less interested in kind of a lot of it because it's so predictable. I think that's it, right? It's very predictable. And then the other one was like in Nkunku this transfer window, like January, it was in or out. Like was going to go to PSG. I think even like Bayern, if with Mathis Till or whatever his name is, like, going to Spurs on loan and things like that. I think there were options, there were solutions because the Nkunku we saw today is not the Nkunku that I've been backing for the last 2 seasons.
Yeah.
Like, and to be fair, I don't know. I probably don't want to go against dunk in the air. Like, stop lobbing it to me. Would love to play a combination and get a little passing and moving happening. But, for whatever reason, it's not there. And yet they came out in public and really talked about how this is like, has a chance to work. And then Maresca puts him in a situation where he can't be successful either. So it's like neither side is doing well with it. Again, decisiveness, opportunity to make a decision, and it wasn't done yet again. And so you talk about having someone push Jackson, like Guy's doing as best as he can, but no one else is pushing him. And so he's left up to his own standards to decide what he needs to do to get better. And that's tough.
Yeah. And we have a whole episode coming out later this week where we dig into how the windows have gone, also telling the story too, because I think there are multiple individuals in the organization that you can kind of point to. I think that the current mode is blaming just the sporting directors, the co-sporting directors in general with Winstanley and Stewart. And they're not the only culpable ones for where Chelsea are today. And while there are a couple of bright spots within our transfer business, there's also a lot of unfortunate signings and sales that have had to occur because of how we've maybe adopted this model. So we're going to get into all that later this week. So we want you to stick around Wednesday for that one. But that's going to do it for this episode, recapping the results against Brighton, bringing Brandon back to give us a little bit of positivity before a Friday match on Valentine's Day. Hopefully Chelsea lets us feel the love in that scenario and showers us with roses and victories and 3 points on the day, because otherwise it is going to be a very, very sad box of half chocolates for all these supporters out there. Is that enough Valentine's related imagery there, Brandon?
It's well done. I was just thinking in my head, I'm like, it's going to be a heartbreaker, Dan. Prepare yourselves, protect yourself emotionally. Don't let the football ruin your plans, everybody. That's all I have to say is if you have plans that evening with someone special in your life, you don't want to be talking about how Chelsea broke your heart earlier that day. It's not going to go well. I've been there.
I will say in other seasons, you might have made the gamble because you know what, like a really big match, like something's going on. Like, you might have gambled on things like a birthday or an anniversary or something of that nature. This team is not worth it this year. Let's just be fair.
Zero
let's
trust.
Call a spade a spade.
Yeah, we're not doing the trust falls at Cobham. No shot.
No. All right. Well, hey, enjoy that match at the end of the week. Stay tuned for some more podcasts and videos on YouTube as well. So get involved over there. As Brandon mentioned, you can sign up for the free weekly newsletter, the London's Blue Dispatch from our good friend Sam. You can get involved in the conversation over in Discord and for your pay capacity. And also can leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. But that's going to do it for this episode. So until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.